Talkback with William Crawley on BBC Radio Ulster.
Exactly a week after the Paris atrocities, the BBC presenter Andrew Neil launched his own verbal assault on the Islamic State militant group last night on his television programme. He called them a pack of losers and Islamist scumbags. Was he right to let rip? Or is he in danger of turning the BBC into Fox News? Regular viewers of the political programme this week on Thursday nights will know that the presenter, Andrew Neil, is certainly no shrinking violet. But last night, he let rip at the start of his show his personal message to the Islamic State militant groups. Have a listen to this.
Evening all, welcome to this week. A week in which a bunch of loser jihadists slaughtered 132 innocents in Paris to prove the future belongs to them, rather than a civilization like France. Well, I can't say I fancy their chances. France, the country of Descartes, Boulay, Monet, Sartre, Rousseau, Camus, Renoir, Berlioz, Cézanne, Gauguin, Hugo, Voltaire, Matisse, Debussy, Ravel, Sanson, Bizet, Satie, Pasteur, Molière, Frank, Zola, Balzac, Poulenc, cutting-edge science, world-class medicine, fearsome security forces, nuclear power, Coco Chanel, Chateau Lafite, Coco Van, Daft Punk, Zizou Zidane, Juliette Binoche, liberty, equality, fraternity, and creme brulee. Versus what? Beheadings, crucifixions, amputations, slavery, mass murder, medieval squalor, a death cult barbarity that would shame the Middle Ages. Well, IS or Daesh or ISIS or ISIL or whatever name you're going by, I'm sticking with IS, as in Islamist scumbags. I think the outcome is pretty clear to everybody but you. Whatever atrocities you're currently capable of committing, you will lose. In 1,000 years' time, Paris, that glorious city of lights, will still be shining bright, as will every other city like it, while you will be as dust, along with a ragbag of fascists, Nazis and Stalinists that have previously dared to challenge democracy and failed.
It's pretty extraordinary stuff, isn't it? Andrew Neil last night at the start of his political programme this week. Do you think it was appropriate for a BBC presenter, with all the BBC guidelines about impartiality and objectivity in journalism, to begin a political programme with that editorialised response to what happened in Paris with the Islamic State militant group's attacks there? Let's talk to the US-born, UK-based broadcaster, good friend of this programme, Charlie Wolfe. Good afternoon, hello. Charlie. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Music to your ears?
I thought it was compelling, to say the least, and quite frankly, I had no problem with the content and also the presentation. Also, just to massage your listeners, I should say that Mr. Neil's voice was spoken by an actor, okay, just like the old days. But no, seriously, I don't think it violates the rules, because it was not necessarily a news program like the 6 o'clock news. It wasn't Hugh Edwards. He is a contributor. He wasn't, for instance, interviewing somebody in a news capacity. He was giving a commentary. And I don't really see anybody that would disagree with the content of what he was saying.
So you wouldn't have a problem with me saying it on this program then, would you?
No, probably not. But again, it is one of the few times where the topic, I can't see very few people not agreeing with the outcome. This wasn't about an industrial breakdown, dispute. I'm trying to think from the BBC Producer's Handbook, which I haven't read in a long time.
Well, so I'm bound as a BBC news presenter. I'm bound to be impartial. I'm not allowed to express my personal views on any issue that is publicly contentious. Now, the point you seem to be making, Charlie, is there's no public contentiousness about this. Everybody generally takes the same view that these attacks were murderous and that those who did this were Islamist scumbags. Everyone takes that view.
I would hope so. I think those that don't are probably very much in the minority.
Danny Morrison, former Sinn Féin publicity director, author and broadcaster these days, well known to our programme. Welcome back, Danny. Do you take that view, Islamist scumbags?
Well, let's set aside for the moment what is going on in Syria. The fact of the matter is that there's a major double standard here. I think he was being pompous and self-indulgent. He was playing to the gallery. Probably, I would estimate, probably 85% of the British public who heard it probably agree with him. But that is besides the point. It's a double standard, because you would not have a presenter lasting for 1 minute going on television and saying to Ted Heath, what you did in Derry and Bloody Sunday today was murder, it was a disgrace, you should resign. You wouldn't get that happening. And that's just one example of it. You know, he thought he was the Prime Minister addressing the nation for 2 minutes. And that's why I think the man was self-indulgent.
Charlie.
I wouldn't say it was self-indulgent, and also, you know, Ted Heath is political. This was not. I don't suppose Daesh is a member of any British, American, French political party. It's like, again, back in the 40s talking about the Nazis. You know, I think this rises above. I'd even say it rises above even the dispute of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. You know, in talking about, say, Sinn Féin. You know, I could see where one would keep a sort of a balance. As much as I would maybe disagree with their politics. There is no politics here. These are just plain murderers. Simple as that.
Well, I agree absolutely with what they're doing, but if you're going to be a journalist, if you're going to be balanced, if you're going to mediate and tease out the facts and educate the listening public, the fact of the matter is that there is also a duty on a journalist to present where did ISIS come from. There was no ISIS 8 years ago. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq until Tony Blair and Bush Jr. on behalf of his father to carry out unfinished business. They were the people. The West actually fostered these groups.
So what do you want, to have a 2-minute rant on Bush and Blair? You know, come on, this is a bit of moral relativism. You know, it's Daesh.
No, it's factual.
No, I think that's a bit disputable. There's, you know, ultimately it was Daesh that sat there shooting people, you know, between the eyes, point blank range, execution style in a concert hall in France. It was Daesh. It was trying to blow themselves up outside a stadium.
Let me just explain, because Charlie, you're quite within your rights to use that term Daesh or Daesh. I'll just explain in case some people don't know what that means. It's another term for ISIS or ISIL, or as the Islamic State group. It's an acronym from the Arabic of their name, and some people believe that they find it quite offensive, which is why I suspect Charlie's using the term now. Am I right?
No, actually, I wasn't. I was just that seems to be the word of the day. I find
Daesh.
it hard to keep track of the runners and riders myself sometimes.
Okay,
as far as
let's go to Abdullah Al-Andalusi, co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative. Good afternoon. Welcome back, Abdullah.
Hi there. Good afternoon.
What did you make of Andrew Neil's letting rip last night?
Well, we all believe that the Paris attacks were horrific, and that goes without saying. But I think Andrew Neil was unhelpful by expressing and invoking a very emotional and false government narrative to portray this conflict as an existential threat to Western civilization, which is false. Just yesterday on the BBC Question Time, one of the panelists, the historian Sir Max Hastings, rejected this narrative that it was a existential threat to Western civilization. This has got nothing to do with how the West live, how the people live in the West. Mehdi Hassan also on yesterday's BBC Question Time mentioned that this was what many experts are referring to as blowback from the foreign policy adventures in the Middle East. Last year, ISIS declared war on the West for beginning a bombing campaign against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And so Andrew Neil was really being unhelpful, especially when he called ISIS Islamists, or even Islamic in any way. They're not. And the biggest enemies of ISIS are, quote-unquote, Islamists. ISIS are fighting people on the ground, and people are fighting them on the ground who believe in caliphate. The main Islamic factions of Syria believe in Islamic concepts. So it's
Abdullah, let me just cut in there, because I want to take that point to Charlie Wolfe you've just made. It's a very interesting point, Charlie. Abdullah's saying that what Andrew Neil did last night, far from simply expressing anger at brutality and murder, and everyone would agree with that, of course, that's not controversial. He went further than that. He took a political position, which other people disagree with, in terms of the clash of civilisations narrative and the religious political nature of this group. And that is crossing the line, he says.
I don't think so. I mean, with respect, Abdullah, and I can understand his point and where he's coming from, is you know, I don't think they hold up to Islamic ideals or Muslim ideals. You know, I know Mehdi Hassan. I have great respect for him as a Muslim.
Now, hang on a minute. I'm not asking you, Charlie, to give us your view on that political debate.
No,
I'm saying
I just
Abdullah's point is that Andrew Neil joined the debate. That's no longer impartial.
Yeah, but I just want to say that I think that to use the word Islamist is important because though Abdullah may not see them as Islamic, they see themselves as Islamic, and I think it's important that we define them as they define them.
They certainly see themselves that way. Danny?
Well, no, I was making an analogy that no journalist on the BBC would be allowed to make a similar rant against its own domestic government over some murderous deed that it was involved in. That was the analogy that I was making, and I think it's fair comment.
Well, even setting that particular example to the side, take us to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict right now. One can't see, Charlie, the BBC permitting a presenter like myself or Andrew Neil or anybody else to go on air and state a particular view or to condemn a particular action, one side or the other on that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I hear it done all the time, maybe a little bit more subtly, or not necessarily the BBC, but I thought Jon Snow's rant against, was it Netanyahu or Mark Regev? I can't.
Yeah, but we're talking about the license fee funded BBC.
I know,
here.
but I'm just saying from a general journalistic standpoint. And the difference was, of course, he was. Well, there's Ian Lee, a good friend of mine, works on Three Counties Radio, was talking to a Christian group, and they were stating their position on homosexuality. And he said they're bigots. Well, you're not allowed to do that because, if it was an interview with someone, that's different from a commentary.
Ian Lee is no longer in his job. There you go.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone. Let's go to Gavin. Hi, Gavin.
Hello.
We're talking about the appropriateness of this moment of television. What do you think on that?
Well, it's quite simple. Your man Andrew Neil's completely out of order, trying to blame these people, calling these people scumbags and all the rest of it. It's a bit like yourself. So you're saying you as a journalist have no say, and you have to be impartial and you have to be yes. Yet for years and years, when the Irish Republican Army were fighting here, you were calling them terrorists and terrorists and terrorists the other. So you do express personal views. All you do. And you're told what to do and what to say. They try and make out that ISIS is the bad guys here and all the rest of it. I don't agree with what happened in France. I don't agree with murder at all. But what is happening to Muslims all around the world? They're getting bombs dropped on them. They're getting... their land is being raped and pillaged, oil's being stolen left, right and centre. And the truth of the matter is, you don't like it when the truth comes home to hunt you. That's what the problem is here.
Well, that doesn't quite make sense to me because a lot of this has been going on for some time, well before 9/11.
Yes.
I mean, there's this.
Are you telling me that?
Let me finish. There's this impression that everything revolves around the United States. We're a powerful nation, but we ain't quite that powerful. Let's put a little responsibility on the people that are acting.
We're involved in drug dealing in Nicaragua. You were involved in burning crops in El Salvador. You've invaded and destroyed most of the world, and you're sitting there trying to say that what happened in France.
No, I think that's a bit of a biased and unrealistic view.
No, it's not biased. It's a fact.
Gavin, thank you very much. I've got to go, Gavin. I've got to take another couple of callers. Gavin, thank you. I don't think anyone's saying that this should not have been aired on the BBC. I think the question is whether Andrew Neil was the appropriate person to be saying it, because it sounds to many people like a commentary piece. Danny Morrison's made that point. You don't actually disagree with much of what he said. You just don't believe he was the person to say it.
Yeah, and I also think that if he's going to say something, he has to say more than that. In order to justify what he said. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be kind to the CIA, for example, I mean, maybe they did not foresee the circumstances whenever they trained Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan because they wanted to put one in the eye over Russia at the time. So they are involved, and they have been involved in arming the Free Syrian Army, whose arms were then stolen or taken by ISIS or IS or IL or whatever you call them, right, to have a go at the West. And they are drawing upon, they must have some support, but I have absolutely no time for them. They're a danger, they have to be tackled. But the best weapon that we could have against them is the truth.
We've got time for just one more call, another bite on this. Dave, how you doing?
How you doing? How you doing, William? Andrew Neil needs a big pat on the back for what he said last night. He's one of the few BBC presenters, in my opinion, with the testicular fortitude to make his personal comments on air. He said what most decent people are thinking of Daesh. Now look what's happening in Mali as we speak.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen too many of the Muslim clerics or the imams speaking out against the Paris attacks or anything else that's been done against the Christians.
Well, I don't know why you're saying that. They even took out a full-page ad in newspapers, and hundreds of them added their name to a condemnation of it. But if you don't look, you don't see it. Dave, thank you very much. Abdullah, final word from you on this.
I think I just wanted to convey that the main problem is Andrew Neil has obfuscated the debate. What if he had reported 20, 15 years ago that the IRA's attacks against Britain were because they hate our way of life. Everyone would say that it would completely obfuscate what's really happening down on the ground and what the issues are and how we can resolve it. And secondly, calling ISIS or putting them having any connection to Islam is like saying that the anti-Balaka groups in Central Africa or the Lord's Resistance Army in Uganda has anything to do with Christianity. These are just a brutal criminal militia who use the vestments of religion to justify whatever they do, same as everyone in that region,
Abdullah,
including the president of Egypt and everybody else, and Saddam Hussein before him. Everyone does it.
Abdullah,
and we shouldn't give them the benefit of having any connection to Islam in the first place.
Abdullah Al-Andalusi, thank you very much. Thanks to Charlie Wolf and Danny Morrison as well. That was a pretty hot and heavy discussion.